Facebook. Hi everyone, it's Caitlin Mitchell from Be Wealthy, and I'm here with Andy. I was just telling Andy, and he was shocked, which makes sense, that we were going live in Facebook. And the reason that's so exciting is Andy has known me for a long time and knows that technology-wise, I tend to be 6 to 7 years behind schedule, which is right on time for going Facebook Live.
Right. So thank you for having me. She's like, wait a second, we're going live. Okay, here we are.
Well, good deal. So Andy, I know a whole lot about you. So selfishly, I just sit and chit chat for the hour, but a lot of our members from Be Wealthy, as well as, some of our guests today, don't know as much about you. So could you share with us in about 3 minutes, a little bit about your background, the businesses you're in, how long you've been doing this, where you're from, all the goodies?
Sure. Yeah. No, I grew up just outside of Washington, D.C., kind of a typical dad, was a government employee, got an undergrad degree in political science, and then pursued an MBA after that. And I went to work for a pretty large consulting firm in Washington, D.C., mostly focused on security and policy strategy. So, real estate wasn't something I really dabbled in. I bought a condo. And 10 years later, I thought, I'm not loving this consulting life of DC and traveling sometimes 30 or 40 weeks a year. What else can I do? And at the same time, I had bought a condo in a little town called Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, which is where I live today, right? And so I thought, I'd travel during the week, I'd come home, I'd go to the beach and think, boy, man, I really love this. What can I do to make this my life, right? I'm pretty decent with people. I'm decently smart, not the smartest guy in the world, but I work really hard, and combining those things. And I started to dabble a little bit in the subject matter of real estate. And I was like, I like it. So let's make a go of it. And so that was 20 years ago. And so I've been in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware 20 years ago. I've had a retail business for 20 years. I started a team probably about 7 years ago. Didn't really know what I was doing, got too busy for my life, or too busy in the number of transactions that we were doing. So you hire, an admin / transaction coordinator, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't spend all my time showing property. So you hire another agent, and then another agent, and then another agent. And then, it kind of grew from there. And we can get a little bit more into that. But so I've owned commercial real estate, including a bar and a liquor store. I've done a dozen or so build to own properties. And most recently, I think you're well aware why we're having some conversation today, I decided to sort of put my limiting beliefs aside and start and stand up a formal real estate investment company called S Squared. And that space primarily is in affordable housing with a specific focus or model on mobile homes. So we're doing two things. Well, we're actually doing one thing really well right now. We're doing something called wholetailing, where we actually negotiate the purchase of a mobile home through a number of marketing factors or efforts. And then we typically close on them, clean them up, and resell them. We've actually gotten a little bit too busy in that space, even though I have 2 full-time acquisition specialists. I've just put an ad out to hire a VA to do kind of the operations, like what happens after we buy it. But even more so, we're starting to buy a few more properties than that, or at least close on them, and we're starting a wholesale business. And so I'm back to being another student again and learning from Joe, Brett's guy who's running the investment side, and how do I stand up a wholesale business? Because quite frankly, I don't know what to do. So that's kind of where I am today.
Awesome. There were parts of that journey that I didn't know, Andy. I didn't know about your security and policy strategy consulting, but it actually does make a lot of sense now when I hear the questions that you ask and how you study and how you learn. So that's super cool. I'd love to jump back before we get to how you're kicking ass right now. Excuse my language. I'd like to jump back those 7 years ago. So 7 years ago, you decide, hey, I'm getting too busy. I need to start leveraging and growing my retail real estate business outside of just Andy. What did that look like? How did that start?
So I was doing probably 20 million by myself, 40, 45 transactions a year. And I knew quickly, first off, I was a disaster at the details, always was. I knew that you could not rely on me And I struggled for a long time taking that contract and saying, okay, what are all the contingency dates, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd already started to do a little bit of that with someone kind of administratively on a very part-time basis. But, you know, once you get to, I think, 30 or 40 contracts a year, that is not something that you can do by yourself. And so that was a big thing was, okay, I need an administrative person who can develop checklists. We're very disciplined in how we approach that. Everything that we do has always been very checklist up, right? It's process. I always say to any agent or anybody who's trying to grow in their business, I said, what happens when you walk into an Apple store? And the answer is exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. So we try to repeat that model in our business. And that's kind of how we got started, by saying, okay, I'm not hiring an admin. Here's what I do. I'm going to give her what I do or give him what I do and make it better, right? And so that was the first step. That allowed me to then continue to show and do more real estate. And then I figured, you know, I don't want to go out and show property as much as I can't afford to spend 3 days a week, 6 hours a day going to show property, right? So then you go hire someone else. But truly the expansion of our business grew when I was getting recruited to Keller Williams. I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon. I don't like a lot of change, but there was our OP, whose name is Matt Fedek. He's one of Gary Keller's top 100. He gave me the MREA book and said, just read a couple of chapters of this. And one that I read was, go touch your sphere a lot and your business will grow. Okay, I did it. We started touching my sphere twice a year and we grew like 40%.
Wow.
Okay, that's a big deal. And then I was on a couple of online forums and I read another book called Perk Your Sphere. And it was like, Gary Keller said in MREA 2, which hasn't come out yet, but basically you should touch your people, folks, 40 to 50 times. I thought, I don't know how to do that. So I read a book and we applied the book. And today we're probably about done 44, we're probably going to do 45, 47 million this year. It's a very small retail team. It's myself still. I have one very full-time agent, two mostly full-time agents. So there's 4 of us on the retail side, and we have an amazing administrative support side, an operations director, transaction coordinator, and we just hired someone to do kind of branding and marketing. Kind of like, who are you? You know, how do you grow that side of the business? So,
yeah. Awesome. If you, I have two totally different questions, so I'll ask them one at a time because both at the same time wouldn't make any sense. One of them is there's so much information out there, right? Especially in the real estate space. It's everyone has an idea of how you can grow your business. And if you do all of them at the same time, they won't work. So you got really specific on the sphere side. How did you determine, or how do you determine what advice to listen to and what you consider bad or not pertinent advice?
So going back to the background of like, who am I, right? I'm pretty disciplined in following the approach that I didn't perfect, right? You know that I've lost a lot of weight and I've done a lot of fitness activities in my life, like 150 pounds and Ironmans and all that sort of stuff. I did it by, you know, the first half of it was just going on the elliptical and burning. When you're 350 pounds, you're burning 150, 1,500 calories at approach. I'm like, okay, this is really working. And then I got halfway there and I stopped losing weight. And a friend of mine who I knew socially was a personal trainer. They were having a fitness competition at the local Gold's Gym and said, come on in, I'm going to teach you how to eat right. And I'm like, all right, give me a book, Body for Life. I followed the approach 6 days a week, 6 meals a day, work out an hour a day, and I lost the weight, right? So that's kind of my approach. I mean, I say that, and to leading up to this, right? It's like, I want to run a 5K. How do I do that? Well, go reach couch to 5K. Yeah, it's a proven method, right? You want to lose 100 pounds, do it my way or go Weight Watchers, whatever that might be. You want to make $1 million, you go find somebody else who's already done it and you follow their model. And this is not an advertisement for Brett Tanner, but I've known him for 5 years now, right? I've known him at an intimate level when he's my personal business coach, but I've known him when we came back from COVID and there was 6 of us in the room. Yeah. He's hammering everyone's business on the retail side. And some people are starting to move in the investment space. I'm like, that's not really for me. Like, I don't get it. I'm scared of it, right? I'm not going to do it. Right. And so for me, it's following a model. So I kind of look at what experts say to do. And there's a lot of noise in the retail real estate business, right? There's online leads, there's go knock on doors, there's go host social events. I'm following the guidance of others.
Awesome. So you pick a profit, if you will, in a specific arena and then follow them specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Versus 96.
Right. I mean, I could spend all day looking on the internet. I interviewed an agent yesterday and he said to me, well, I'm going to go take Bold, which is a wonderful class. I'm in all these networking groups on Facebook. And I said, so you're going to spend 2 hours today on a networking group on Facebook across the country. Is that making you money? Well, no, but I really like it. Well, all right, great. I mean, that's not a model that makes me money, right? Follow the successful models. That's kind of how my approach.
What are some of the, other than the 2 hours on the Facebook networking, what are some of the bad recommendations you've heard for agents out there?
I think online lead, buy-side leads are really, really tough. And
Okay.
we learned that lesson a couple of years ago. We have 14,000 people. We bought online leads for 10 years. And I saw a statistic online that there are 120 million online leads distributed a year. Do you know that there's only 6 million houses on average sold in the last 20 years, whether it's down market, up market, it's about 6 million. And I thought, well, gee, that's everybody who's in my database. How many other databases are there in? I tried to sell mobile home leads or give them away to another agent in my office who had been working mobile homes for a long time. And I gave her 100 of people looking at mobile homes. She's like, well, I've already got 17 of these. We cut online buy-side leads off that week.
Wow.
We stopped buying. So that's one area that I'm just pretty adamant that was for me. There's a lot of people having tremendous success. They have really disciplined practices in place for the 5 minute, the 1 minute or 2 minute return phone call when it comes in. We live in this micro market that I don't live in a big city. And I thought, I don't know that I have the capacity to go after every one of those online leads as they come in. And they get really expensive when you live in a small town because, Zillow leads can be $600 or $800 here for my little town of Rehoboth Beach. I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Right.
That's
so for us, that's one thing. If you're going to do something, do it right. Right. Just don't do 20 things, do 3 or 4.
That brings me to another question that I have for you. You shared with us a little bit about in your personal world, right? That you had an incredible weight loss journey. You got super into fitness, Ironman, which is no joke.
Right.
One of the parts you left out is now you're a wild pickleball competitor.
I am.
But on the personal side, you exhibit incredible disciplines. And I see those modeled on the business side as well. Is that natural for you? Is that just a standard of how Andy operates, or is that a learned behavior?
It's a learned behavior. I probably wasn't that until I was probably 27 or 28. I was a disaster of a student, decently smart, but in high school, I was kind of a knockoff with other pretty good kids. And then same in college, kind of average student. And then I went to work for arguably one of the top 3 management consulting firms in the world. And it was sort of get it in line. Right.
Yeah.
And then I guess, so I had to be super disciplined at work in my approach to that to be successful there. Right. It was an up or out environment. If you weren't moving up, you were counseled out, coached out. Mm-hmm. And then I think that was really where it moved into the weight loss space where, people who are really overweight, right? You arguably, I try to be the funny guy, but the truth is you really struggle inside. And so you start to think about, you start to blame everything else for not being able to lose weight, right? You take shots when you're a kid, you do Nutrisystem and Weight Watchers and all of these things work really well. But of course I was failing the system. I was blaming them for my failure. And I don't know, one day I was like 28 years old and I looked in the mirror and said, you know what? This is my fault. Yeah. And that's really where it pivoted, is about that point, right? Like I could no longer blame other things for my own failure. And so that's kind of was it. Like I had to turn it around. Says, my success is on me. And I hear that from Brett a lot, sometimes like you'll probably talk about my investment space and my limiting belief in that, right? And so kind of whacked you over the head and said, okay, dummy, go figure it out. Go do this and see if you're right. And so, that's kind of.
I just took that note. You can no longer blame anyone but yourself. It's
right.
This is me.
Yeah.
My dad used to say this to me all the time, Andy, and it was so annoying. I'd come to him with my problems, right? I'd say like, oh, you wouldn't believe this and this. And, you're a little kid and it's everybody on the playground this happens with. And he would always say this phrase to me. And I'm like, damn it. And I made the mistake of telling it to Brett. So now Brett says it to me, which is super convenient. Who's the constant? And it's like, oh, I'm the one in all my stories. I guess I'm the constant. And so if you realize that it's you, that's the good news, is that's the easiest one to change.
Right.
Super cool.
Yeah.
With all of these disciplines that you have, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or have lost temporary focus, what do? How do you realign yourself back into your disciplines? Because you can't be perfect, Andy. If you tell me you're perfect, it's not
no, I mean, I'm a disaster, right? Like I'm a black or white guy, right? Like if I'm off the chain, I'm off the chain. Like, and I hate to keep coming back to weight loss. Like it's it, right? If I'm off the chain, then I'm like, where's my next pizza, beer, glass of wine, or Manhattan, right? And so I was gone. I was you probably saw, I was fortunate to go to the Amalfi Coast for 2 weeks, just got back a few days ago. And we were off the rails. I came home and I was at that magic weight where my clothes don't fit, right? Like I popped the button on my shorts. I was like, uh-oh, what now, right? So that's kind of I kind of set limits, right? Like I'm not going to buy bigger clothes.
Yeah.
Right. So what do I, the mental mindset is now, what do I need to do? Right. So I committed to 75 days hard, right? I think I'm day 8 in, right? Not a drink in 8 days. I'm on a 16-8 fasting schedule. I'm on a twice a day workout schedule. I've been trying to learn Spanish because we were fortunate to buy an investment property in Mexico, and I've been wanting to do it. So now I'm taking, Babbel 30 minutes every day. So I think that's kind of like, I put barriers in place. You talk about pickleball, right? Like I intend to be a professional pickleball player when I retire, maybe in 5 to 7 years, right? What do I have to do? If my serve is terrible, I got to go practice my serve. So, right, like I've now paid a coach that now I have to show up to be in a coaching space, right? Otherwise my money went down the drain.
You put the barriers and the hard black and whites around you in order to correct it versus the concept of like, tomorrow.
Yeah. And, we face that in our retail space, right? Like we're tracking a tiny bit behind of where we wanted our goals to be for this year for lots of obvious reasons, because the market's changing and we could blame interest rates and everything else. I sat the team down yesterday, including the investment side, and said, let's put it up on a wall. And we put hash marks next to everybody's name. How many more deals do you want to do this year realistically? And now let's talk about where that source is going to come from.
Yeah.
And everybody walked away with an action plan. And it's small, right? We're going to close 20 more deals this year. That's the goal, right? How do we close 20 more deals this year?
Wow. Well, speaking of that, I want to rewind. So now today or yesterday, 20 more deals through the end of the year. Walk me through, where is the investment space at? Where is S squared at this time last year?
Yeah. So you mean this time today? Where are we at?
This time last year.
Last year.
In 2021, did S squared exist? I guess is my question.
It existed in previous, because, my partner and I, Patrick, had done some, to be built. We bought some land. It just made sense to have a corporation. Yeah. I was lucky enough to get introduced to another member of our mastermind. He was running a very, very busy investment business. And I dabbled a little, I invested maybe 30 or 40,000 into a couple of deals. But frankly, it was dormant. Like it wasn't anything that I was doing. Sure. It was like I had a little bit of extra cash. Can I make a little cash? And I did. So that was kind of that. So it didn't really exist last year.
Okay. So then you went from, I'll call it a passive investment or something where you weren't the catalyst or you weren't the general partner or the one putting the oar in the water. You were investing capital. It went from there. And then it took a very strong, I'll call it a right turn.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that, and how did that happen?
Yeah. So I'll take you back to October of last year. I sat in a room with others who were starting to really move forward in the investment space. And I was now learning the content, kind of learning the strategy behind actually making some money once you have a deal in front of you. I had a landowner come back to me on the retail side and said, hey, listen, we couldn't sell this when we had it on the market 3 years ago. We still want to sell it. If you know anybody's going to buy it at, and I'm just going to use the numbers, if you can buy it at 45,000 per lot, there's 2 of them, we'll sell it to you. I said, well, I'm interested in that. And so, you know, on the retail side, they were going for double that. Right. And so this is what she wanted. And she said to me very, very plain, we need this money. We need to get out. We need to move this forward right now. And you heard me, I think at the November, December mastermind, I took that and I doubled that. I put it into our Facebook group in our internal company. I said, here's 2 lots for 97.5. And I sold them both. I made them to pay closing costs because I had a big goal of like, can I make 100,000 on this deal? Right? I needed to make 100,000. So I made 100,000 by literally learning from others and applying that, you know, sales strategy to that. So, you know, that was the first like light bulb. And I thought, you know, and then it kind of went dormant. Holidays, didn't do much. And then I came back to the mastermind in March, and another colleague of ours stood up in front of the room and said, I made like $2.5 million, and I added $8 million to my net worth last year. I was like, WTF? Like, really? Why did I go all of last year and did not apply the strategies and methodologies that we've been sitting in here and paying a lot of money and a lot of time and effort out of our retail business to not apply that? So I went home and said, this is it, right? Now we're going to stand up this business in 22. And that's kind of where 21 happened and now has evolved into this year.
So you come home, you say, we're going to do this. What do you do first? What did that mean when you say we're going to stand up a business?
Yeah, good question. The first thing, I knew that I was not going to be able to do it alone. So I applied a hiring methodology that I had learned from one of Brett's guys. And we started standing up a hiring method where we were doing interviews once a week. We would advertise on Indeed, we would vet them, we would invite them in. I'd talk to them. If you're not licensed, here's an opportunity because we're standing up a real estate investment company and we're following some very specific models. Here are the disciplines that you'll have to have. You're going to have to be on the phone for 2 to 4 hours a day. And then, you know, in 30 days or in 21 days, you're going to be on appointments. And that's kind of what we did. I mean, we sort of followed this approach of, I need to get them experienced at cold calling and being on the phones and being a little bit uncomfortable with people they've never spoken to, and in a demographic that could be a little bit more gruff, right? Yeah. Our average sale on our retail side is like, you know, 485, 500,000, right? That's a different demographic than going out and buying a $70,000 mobile home for someone who might need cash, right, at this time. And so we needed them to get uncomfortable. I then had heard about, you know, some direct mail strategies that were being used elsewhere. And I thought, all right, I'm going to make a go of it. And it was a big financial commitment. It was an $18,000 commitment. And I thought, you know, we analyzed the data set, right? This goes back to, and I'll take you back to the beginning where I said to Brett, he said, well, do you have any mobile homes in your area? I said, no, they're all on land lease. And he said, well, you don't want that. And he said, are you sure you don't have any? I said, we have none. And we went back. He said, all right, I'm going to give you the task for our next coaching call. Go find out how many mobile homes you have on non-land lease properties in your county. I think we came back with like 9,300, 4,200 in mobile home parks. So we said, all right, that's our target market. Brett's like, give it a whirl. And so then we dropped the $18,000 for a 5-piece mailer. Out of that, I think we closed, I don't have exactly the numbers in front of me, but we closed something like 11 deals that, you know, we have a couple still pending, but pending and closed, that those deals alone of something like $520,000 net profit.
18K turned into 520 net profit.
Right. And I did most of that by myself because the acquisition folks were just coming in. So I was going on an appointment. One of my retail guys who wasn't super busy was stepping in and going on appointments. He's like, hey, I'll get in on this. Right. And we just started rolling and we just started to roll it. And then I thought, okay, so now we started getting the acquisition folks on. We figured out our next data set. we had the 9,300 or roughly so. We're going to start dropping direct mail to that data set. And right now we have about another 250 pending and closed on top of that original 520. So I set a goal to make $1 million at investment space. It's scary still because I've been closing all those deals. I used I put cash into that investment company up front, right? And sometimes you're like, where's my $400,000 that I put out? That's a lot of money. I don't take that lightly. Anybody in this room might think $10,000 is as much money as 400,000. Like those are big risk dollars for me.
They're huge.
And they're huge. And so, but we try to follow that strategy, buy it 50-55% of market value, look at what the cleanup is. I'm pretty good at identifying how much a roof or some carpet is, and that's what I'm teaching my guys now, right? Like I saw a quote a couple of weeks ago and I texted the acquisition folks and said, this key to this business is make more offers. So like, that's our motto. It's called the MMO cash cows, like our text chain, right? MMO cash cows. If you are not making more offers, then we're in trouble. And that's kind of where we are today. Come full circle forward. We're now in this place that frankly, I have a couple of options. One, I can start to borrow hard money loans to start taking down more properties and closing on them, or I can stand up this wholesale business. And we were at the whiteboard yesterday. In fact, this afternoon, I'm back to the whiteboard to map out what is our strategy, and going into our mastermind inside, in Facebook. And I have a kind of a micro group that a lot of those folks, Brad and Isabel and some others. We have a little text group called the I shouldn't say it, but it's called the Be Wealthy. It's called the Be Wealthy Gangsters. So there's like 10 of us. So all of them. So, but there's a lot of knowledge in that group of people that I've been growing with for the last couple of years, and some who grew before I did. So, okay, folks, you're doing wholesale. How long should I, from the time I put it under contract to I prep the marketing ad, how many days should the lead time to be to go under contract? Like those are things I'm trying to learn, right? And I'm watching Joe's videos and things like that. So we're literally mapping out the process back to the checklist. What's the checklist to get this done?
I love it. One of the things that I was thinking about just now, Andy, is people may be listening to this and they're all the way back where you were when it was Andy the hustler. Not that you're not hustling today, you're hustling arguably harder than ever. But Andy by himself, you strategically set up and said, I have to get leverage here. Then I need to get leverage in this point. Now you systematically business plateau to growth over business plateau to growth have strategically lined them all up in such a way that continues to give you leverage to more profit, leverage to more profit, leverage to more profit, to now invest to leverage to more profit. So you're getting that on both tracks, from the operating business side and the wealth side, which is impressive. And you just did it in a really systematic way, just one foot in front of people.
But it's scary too, right? Because at some point the leverage does cost a little bit of money, right? You got to make that strategic decision to hire a Caitlin, right? Like you're like, oh my God, can I, and I don't know how long you started, but you've had a very successful track record before becoming to the Be Wealthy group. Whoever decided to, when Brett made that decision to hire you and to come on and now lead and be the CEO of his organization, right? You have to jump. You have to know that that's going to be an uncomfortable move to make that investment, but you have to be able to willing to pour yourself into it.
It's the same thing you did on the mailers too. If you think about it that way, it's two different types of leverage. And then it's the accountability in a system around that leverage piece that gets the profit. Right. Correct. Yeah. I mean, you've met Tom, my operations director on the retail side. He's been cobbling together the operations side on the investment side. But I said to him, I said, I can't tax you more than that. Right. So we've had some really tremendous success hiring VAs. I had not done that before. So we're going back to the cyberbacker folks. So we're hiring another VA to literally run the operations of the investment side. Wow. Awesome. Yeah. Can I ask you a couple wild questions? Sure. So I have a feeling this is one of my favorites, and I have a feeling you're gonna have a good answer. No pressure if you don't. But what is an unusual habit or absurd thing that you love?
I was trying to think about that. I mean, observe unusual habit. I don't know. I'm not really quirky. I don't know. You know me really well. I'm not too quirky, but I
You
don't
were
know.
early, I will say this, you were early in the pickleball trend to where people were like,
Yeah,
what are you even talking about? And you were like, I'm the
yeah,
president of the National Pickleball League. I mean, I'm as
right.
deep as
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that is it, right? It's pretty unusual for people under the age of 50, although I have cracked 50, but nobody, like people are like, what? What is that? Right. And the fact that you have to call it pickleball, it's like, really? It's such a quirky name. Like I'm trying to get you to play. Like you're a collegiate tennis, oh no, you're a collegiate golf player, right? And you
I
started
went to
playing.
play. I
Yeah,
had the time of my life. It was so much fun. I
yeah,
went to play with my mom and her friends, and they smoked me. They were
right.
unbelievable good. And I played golf, but I played tennis all the time. Like I can
Yeah,
handle it. It
yeah,
was so
right.
fun and fast paced. So I would say that's a quirky one of yours.
It is quirky. No, in fact, so that was what was going to come to the back of my mind. But now it's becoming like LeBron James yesterday bought a pickleball team, right? You're seeing all these ex-pro tennis players are coming in, starting to play pickleball. It's been the fastest growing sport for 5 years. I bet it's going to be in the Olympics in 4 to 8 years.
Oh yeah.
It is a thing. It's a thing, right? And I'm completely obsessed about it. I have a league. I have league tonight at 4 o'clock. I had my coach this morning at 7 a.m. Right, so it's yeah, I'm in it. A little too much. Like I've traveled down to the villages for a private coach there. Every single time I'm in Phoenix, I'm like, where's the pickleball courts? I'm like,
Well, and then you're like, can we push back this event an hour so I can play pickleball?
yeah, can we not stay at on the Indian reservation at the casino? Because it's like 20 miles away. Like I got to go to the courts. So
That is so funny. That's so funny. When
yeah,
you said LeBron James, I was like, that wouldn't be fair. Could you imagine with the length of his body and his reach?
yeah, but that's it, right? Those guys getting into that, like I played in the villages. There's a former pro professional basketball player, like 6'9". I mean, he's 7 feet from the net. That guy's over the net with his reach, right? It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another good one. Well, I like these questions because
Sure.
we get to know more than just like the bullet points of Andy. So
Yeah.
what is one of your favorite failures or like apparent failures? What's one of the things either personally or professionally where you're like, that felt terrible, but then it maybe later set you up for success? What's one of your favorite
Well,
failures?
I think the retail side, right? Like I was decently successful at my former firm, right? When I showed up, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to work at 7:30 every day. I'm gonna be successful in real estate. What the hell do I do now? Right? I didn't know. My failure was that I didn't go learn from others. I showed up to a small little Century 21 office where a bunch of people have been around for 15 or 20 years, right? I now I'm aging myself, right? The MLS wasn't quite a thing or just starting to be a thing in 2003, 2002. I thought, well, how do I go get clients? I thought I sit there and wait for the guy to knock on the door. Well, we know that's very different today. And I started doing direct mail. So I live in a neighborhood of 800 homes. I started dropping, cheesy postcards on my own printer in my office and, doing data merges. And I did that. And then, I started knocking on doors. I started hosting events. I was that guy that did 10 things to try to get business and hardly any of it worked. Right. That was probably the biggest thing. But what I did do was build a database. So I was really obsessive about building a database and not because of real estate, because I love to throw great parties. I used to host an annual Memorial Day party that at some point had like 500 people coming at my little house. I had this, little house and I had tents in the front yard and the backyard, bands. And I just, and then I started, and then I was like, well, I can raise some money for a nonprofit. And we started charging and people came anyway. And not charging like a fee. Like if you want to donate, great. And if you want to be a sponsor, it's $100. Right. So I just built a massive database.
That's so smart.
And so so I didn't realize I was ever going to leverage that into the real estate space. It was really just for me to throw great parties. That's probably one thing. Yeah. People ask me all the time, a very good friend, he just retired from Verizon and he wants to get into the real estate space. And he said, well, what should I do? I said, my team is probably not for you because I don't know that you want to be on the phones for 2 to 4 hours a day. But my advice to you is go learn from others who are already doing this, and go join a big $100 million team where they're just providing you leads.
Sure.
and learn in that experience. Because otherwise, you know what he said to me yesterday? He said, well, I'm building a website. I said, great. What is the website going to have a feed? Like, no, this is just really an informative website. Well, it's not my place to say anything, but that's what I did 20 years ago, right? I was like, oh, I got to build a website. Oh, I got to have a Facebook page. Oh, I got to have an Instagram page. Or I got to have Twitter feed. I got to, like, none of that is lead gen.
Sure.
And we know the big teams are in the lead gen model, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was doing that as part of my failure to lead to success in the database side. And I'm grateful. I have a great sphere that refers us business. Today we have in our retail business, roughly 85% of our business comes from what we consider two spheres: my personal sphere of friends and past clients. And then we went out and kind of broke the model of KW Command, and we went and added like 25,000 friends in the KW network. Yeah. And now we communicate to them 2 times a month, and I consider them my sphere. And out of that 84%, 19% of that or 20% of that is agent referrals. Awesome. So we just grind away, like, hey, don't forget about us here at the beach. Have to pay your referral.
Awesome. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
In the past 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or even like a new habit has most impacted or improved your life?
Limiting beliefs, 100%. And I'll give it to Brett Tanner. He's invested in me personally, right? Like, sure, I'm in a coaching program. He pushes me when I think I can't do something, right? It's a story of go find out how many mobile homes there are. Right? I mean, that's a perfect example. He pushes me both in my personal life and my professional life. And all of us have limiting beliefs, right? I'm a fat guy and I don't know how to change it. I'm not making any money today and I don't know what to do. Find someone who can help bust those limiting beliefs and put some discipline into the process that you need to follow. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's it. That is my biggest thing, is that and we still have them. My partner, Patrick, wanted to buy a place in Mexico. I was like, bro, you can't do that. You want to drop $1 million, and that's what it took, because you have to pay cash. You can't get a mortgage. So I actually, at the mastermind in March, a couple key players, including Brett and a couple of others, said to me, your house is double. I was grateful to build a wonderful waterfront house, and it's gone up 2.5 times in value. I have a really low mortgage. He said, go to your bank and see if they'll loan you against your house. We took out, we literally, I went home that March before rates started to go up, took a line of credit out for 2.65%, swept it into my checking account. We went and bought a condo. In fact, Patrick's there right now, finalizing the details. It will do $120,000 in rent. It'll cover all the expenses plus another $60,000 to pay back the principal, that we borrowed against the line of credit. So we expect to pay that off in 9 years.
Again.
Yeah. Again, limiting belief. Yeah, right? I can never do that.
Limiting belief overcome by a system.
Right.
That's the trend.
And people smarter than I am. Like, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Like, I'm better with people. I'm really, really great with people. I'm like, but how do I do that? Go find the guy who can teach me that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What book or books do you recommend most? What has had the greatest impact on you from a book perspective in the last 12 months? Or so?
2 things. Well, I mean, I continue to read that few chapters in MREA, right, about database management, touching your sphere and the impact of that. I also, early on, I read a couple of years ago, I read Profit First, because a lot of people who are running a retail real estate sales business are like, I got $10,000 in. I paid my car payment, I paid this, I paid that, and I had to start treating it as a business. And Profit First taught me a lot about that, right? Agent Andy gets the same payment as the agents on the team. I'm on a 50%, $100 comes in, 50% goes to Agent Andy, but now Andy Staton Home Services has the other $50. How do I distribute that $50 to run a business and be profitable?
That's exactly
that
right.
Was a huge impact. And I was like, wow, that Massage Envy membership that I'm billing against the business shouldn't be on the P&L. I mean, I've heard Brett beat you and Andrew up on the P&L. Right?
Oh, it's brutal.
That's not on my P&L, right? The struggle is real. I had agents starting producing like 300 color copies for an open house. I was like, bro, that's like 22 cents a copy. No longer, right? Like that, you got to start to really look really hard. You start to get, and hiring a bookkeeper helped. Now you have real dialed in on the expenses.
When we typically, and I know you did this with Brett, but typically when we have people starting in the program and we're looking at financials and P&Ls, one of the most uncomfortable exercises that we tend to have is they've grown their business really organically. So they haven't taken and paid their commission, right? They might still be in production, or they're doing a couple deals here and there. They haven't taken their commission income and broken it out as though they paid that to someone else in the business. They've kept it all in the bottom line. And so their profit margin, we're at a 64% profit margin, Andy. And it's like, let's go ahead and rerun those numbers and pull that out. I just had a call with a gal who's putting some numbers together for next year's goal setting for her 135. And I said, let's look at the P&L from this year, look at your profit margin, and then reanalyze, are we pulling everything out as direct and indirect correctly? So when we set the goal for next year, what does it look like? And it was, it's an eye-opening exercise for a lot of people, because the moment
you start cutting expenses really quickly, right? And I was putting a lot of expenses that I shouldn't have as agent Andy onto business owner Andy.
Yes.
Right? Like my car is technically agent Andy, right? It's not necessarily business owner Andy unless I bought a car for example, we're buying right now on the investment side, we're buying, I'm grateful. I drive a pre-owned, I'm a pre-owned guy. I bought a pre-owned Tesla. And you pull up in front of one of our acquisitions and they're like, oh, big man on campus just shut up. It literally happened 2 weeks ago. The guy walked in, he's trying to charge you more money. I'm buying my dad during COVID, my 81-year-old dad bought a $2,500 Ford Ranger on eBay.
That is perfect. That's
I'm buying. I literally just said, Dad, I'm pulling it off your driveway and I'm taking it to the shop to get this thing working. And that's a business expense now, right? That's a real line item business expense that our guys can go take out on appointments if they need to.
I absolutely love that. It makes a ton of sense. I have some funny stories about that I'll tell you over a cocktail at another time. That big piece of you have one P&L, but having direct and indirect allocations allow you to have your financials for filing taxes, where you can take advantage of all of the partnerships
100%.
that the government allows. But when we're making decisions about the ROI on specific marketing and specific pieces we have in our business and allocating those expenses, there's a business making decision version. And then there's a partnership with the government and taking advantage of the opportunities they provide through tax deductions.
Right. I mean, and S squared. So my investment company is a perfect example of that. I intend not to take one penny out of that company because I'm effectively doing this so that I can walk in 5 to 7 years and either have it up and running or, have enough resources for me to kind of do whatever I want. Right. And so, Brett kind of beat me up a few weeks ago, and I have a call with him in the next couple of days. And he's like, did you hire the tax strategy guy? Because if you're not starting, a self-directed IRA in that company, if you're not doing all these tax strategies, you're going to get whacked with 40% tax.
Slaughtered.
So I'm in it right now. Like one of my action items right now for him is, did you start your self-directed IRA? And actually this afternoon, along with mapping out the wholesale, is I hiring that guy to stand up my self-directed IRA plan.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I bought, so some of the properties that I bought, I kept, right, for passive cash flow, and I've got to cost segregate those, right? I've heard all these terms. Then now that it is on my whiteboard, it's like, you have to do this by the end of the year, or you're going to get whacked for, what could be $100,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
So there's a strategy behind that, and I haven't been following it because I hadn't made any real money in it until this year. And now it's like, oh, now I've got to get really smart about what's behind it.
It's so cool. That we get to talk about both sides of wealth, right? So a lot of times I feel like everyone gets so not lost, because it's actually freaking exciting. We focus on the growth side, right? Like, what can we buy? What can we invest in? How do we deploy? And then evaluate our ROI and constantly moving your assets around. But I think the disciplines that we get to talk about around the protection side of wealth, from reduction in tax liabilities to the right investment, or excuse me, the right insurance strategies for risk mitigation, the right entity structures. You are doing a good job of doing those at the same time, but you're right. There's that timeline at the end of the year that's like, oh crap, we're gonna have a hammer coming at us.
Yeah, I'm like, because I'm not taking a penny out. Now I know that my accountant's going to tell me, all right, it's time to take a distribution as an employee.
Yeah.
It's like, those are federal strategies you have to have in place, right? And I do that on the retail side, right? Like I make $50,000 a year as the CEO of Andy Staton Home Services, and they take taxes out and everything else. We take a profit distribution at the end of the year, so all of that's paid tax, right, on it. But I haven't executed the right tax strategies in that I should have, and that's a big part of it now because I'm in a different tax bracket now.
And you're taking action today, so you got this.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
I always tell people it's nothing to be scared of. It's just another checklist we're going to run through, another conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
So you're always, as I listen to you, you're always focused on investments, right? There's the investments of the relationships you've had from an SOI perspective. Yep. There's the investment into the lead generation for mailers. There's the investment in some coaching and training that you've done, and then also into hard assets, right? What are the top 3 investments in any category that you've made in your career that have made the greatest impact?
So Mexico, big time. That is absolutely going to crush it. I mean, we're going to use that. Patrick's going to use it for 5 months a year, and it's still going to produce, enough money to pay down that entire loan in 9 years and cover every expense. I mean, that's crushing, and leveraged with a line of credit on my existing house, right? I mean, that's a number one. Number 2, Brett Tanner, right? I don't mean, and you, right? You are now moving I'm learning a lot from you, both on the operations side. You've kind of started to, we haven't coached yet together, but that probably is coming soon, right? On the operations side. So having someone who knows 10 times more than you do, and that's probably number 2. And you're right. I mean, COVID, the other thing is in COVID, I kind of micro reduced the number of people that I spend time with, and I'm investing in those relationships much more heavily, right? Like the Be Wealthy folks in our mastermind, right? Like we get together, like every single time we get together, like the 10 or 12 of us, we're at dinner together at least one night, right? And we're learning from each other, and we ask questions, and we try to, kind of really learn from that group of people. So people, Mexico, and you guys, I mean, that's been a big part of it.
Well,
and I mean, I can talk about my one real estate investment that I crushed it in, I mean, 88,000 turned into like 250 in profit. Right. And so, I mean, there are a few nuggets like that, but I mean, boy, those are like, it was a family of 7 who needed to sell it. And I was like, I got the cash. They think that we should throw this double wide block, Class C away. And I'm like, no, I think that we can absolutely make a lot of money on that property. And that's what we did.
Andy, you are so purposeful in what you do, the way that you come across, and the way that I've seen you live out over the past, I'll call it 5+ years. Everything you do, even if you have a small deviation, like you talked about the trip you just went on, everything you do comes across as wildly purposeful, disciplined, earnest, and very authentic.
And not always, but always not always perfect, right? And I still get those back of the devil, like, no, you can't do this. So, but yes, I'm pretty purposeful and intent.
So I'm going to ask you a question associated with that, since I know you're so purposeful. If you had a billboard and you could put it somewhere in the world that would have millions of people constantly looking at it, what would that billboard say?
Boy, I mean, that it's something around removing your limiting beliefs. It'd be a much more clever phrase around that, right? It would just it remove your limiting beliefs and invest in others who know more than you do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, yeah, in fact, we were working on a vision statement for our retail team the other day, and it's something to the effect of, celebrating the people that we most care about, the client, right? Or taking care of taking care of our greatest asset, our clients, right? It's our clients, our friends, our people. It's kind of investing in the people that, that can add value to you, but you also going to add value in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, like, I mean, I try to do that. Like Kaleo and I have recently connected in a more real way. I was in Italy and doing a lot of self-reflection. I said, we have a great story together, right? Like I inspired you just in a conversation, a dinner together, and the guy's killing it and blowing up, right?
You changed his life, Andy. Say
yeah, I need.
You changed his life.
But I need, but I like, but I'm also inspired by him. I'm also re-inspired by his own growth, and we have made a committed decision to be more in touch and perhaps visit each other's families and try to be a part of each other's lives more than just being at the masterminds and a text every now and then. So yeah. Little stuff like that. Yeah,
that's incredible. Well, Andy, I selfishly have asked you all of my questions for the past 52 minutes. I could go on for hours more. So thank you for your time. We do have some other questions that came in. And if you have questions, unmute yourself to ask. And also in Facebook, on Facebook Live, if you want to ask questions, you put them down below. Cindy will shoot them over to us. So the first one, Andy, is Stephanie asked, you send out the $18,000 worth of direct mail, and it was for, I believe you said 5 pieces. How many people did that go to? Tell us a little bit about that campaign.
Yeah, so the data set that we found of mobile homes on fee simple land where they had at least 60% equity in the property. So we were pretty specific about what is going to be our data set that we're going to mail. And then how many of them are in mobile home parks that don't necessarily provide services, but generally when you're in a park, there's a little bit more value to the neighborhood, right? There may be a small homeowner association to take care of the roads and that kind of thing. And so we segregated the data set into 2 pieces. So the first one was this, I think 4,200 or 4,300 that we mailed to. And we hired a guy that lots of folks within the mastermind or have already dropped direct mail into. There are 5 pieces of mail. Each piece of mail goes to each one, and it's strategically set up so that, to generate phone calls to your number. And every time a piece of mail drops, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know if you have any that you would screen share, but one, one's this big. It's like 11 by 14, says, my name is Andy, and I'm writing this big, ridiculous letter because I want to buy your house. I mean, that's in effect what it says. I have another one that's a postcard that the folks at the mail house pulled in a Google image of the front of their house and said, is this your house? Because I want to buy it. If you're interested, call Andy. And here's the phone number. Right. And I mean, guys, I was blown away. I never and ever did I think that something so simple would generate the tremendous opportunity that we have today. And that's driving a lot of our business. So, but we also took that same data set and we ripped it against phone numbers. So, ripping mean there's some databases out there that you can, there you go, right? There's a couple of them in there, right? So yeah, I'm writing you this big letter, right? Yeah, it's crazy. And this is exactly what's generating, you should have a postcard in there too, I think, with the front of a house, I think. Yeah, that one, that's our very first mailer that went out. I mean, and I got the negative phone calls like, hey man, what the hell are you doing taking a photo and being in front of my house? You better stay off my property. Well, yes, sir, I appreciate that. We did pull that photo from Google, right? And so that's the exact mailer that all of you have seen and said, that's ridiculous. You're never going to generate business opportunity from this. But I will tell you, there are folks in our mastermind and outside the mastermind, being coached or not coached, that are doing this and they're crushing it.
Yeah.
But you had to find the right data set. I mean, that was the most important thing, is like, what's your data set, right? Yeah, dear Billy, my name is Andy. I'm at S Squared Investments. We'd like to buy the real estate at your street. Please call me.
And that
And
worked.
then, and it worked. And I don't know if you have the check in there too, but one of our members said, you know what? I'm going to send a check for 80% of the market value of that real estate. And it's going to say something to the effect of, I'm sending you this check and it's a real offer. I'd like to buy your house. If I can come out to your house on an appointment, we're going to evaluate your house. And this check is going to be a valid check. And we're going to go to settlement in 30 days. That check, with the first time we've dropped it. So we have not dropped it to our, so we did the first 5 mailings to our data set here. We decided to let that go dormant. And now we're in we're in the second set, and we modified this mailer that you're showing to include 2 checks. So we still have 5 pieces of mail going out, but the second, check is going to go out. I think it drops tomorrow. I mean, I've said to the guys, it's all hands on deck. We're going to get 100 phone calls in the next 7 days.
Well,
And they're going to be on.
Yeah. You will, Andy.
Yeah.
You absolutely.
Yeah. That check is generating an unbelievable, and you got to have the right script. You got to know that's the right questions to ask. We've asked, we've developed all the checklists, like everything you need to know about this house before you go on appointment. If they're telling you they don't know anything about the septic system or the roof, well, there might be hiding something. So you just keep probing and probing and probing.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how it works. I mean, I just, hired the mail house. I gave him the data set that we knew was comfortable in our wheelhouse. And they started dropping direct mail, but then we had to be prepared for the phone call. Hi, this is it. That phone started to ring the first time. It was my part-time retail guy and me answering the phone. It was a lot. We were getting 9 phone calls at a time. We set up a Google number. So the Google number rings both of our phones. And we were like both just picking up the phones as much as we could.
That's awesome. Andy, story is just, it is so cool. And I thank you so much for being so authentic and so transparent. I know we're going to have some more questions coming in. So if y'all have questions, you can email and text them over to me. I will get the answers from Andy for you, or whatever resources that you need, let us know.
Yeah, they can send me notes on Facebook. They can, I mean, I'm pretty open book. I mean, this is a group of people that if I can give back a little bit of what I learned from others, happy to do it.
Perfect. And if you guys need specific samples, like Andy said, you can book with him. You can also scan this QR code. That'll get you a call with me so that I can share with you any mailer templates, or we can go back and look at specific videos that are in guides to help you get all of those resources here at Be Wealthy. We want to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to succeed at a super high level. And once you drop that limiting belief, that you can crush it. Like Andy, and I got to tell you, I took so many pages of notes, Andy. This was I know a lot of people were impacted, but selfishly, you really helped me with a whole lot of things. So I appreciate it a ton. I dropped some of my limiting belief on a specific thing. I'll tell you about it later, but I have
great.
You rocked it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for taking the time today. I really appreciate that as well. So thank you.
All right, you guys go crush it. Tomorrow we have retail, same time, same space, same link. We've got the retail team with Andrew, and he is coming guns a-blazing. I got incredible reviews and comments from y'all on his week last week. And so he's revamped a few of his things for this upcoming week, and he will be bringing it. So we will see you same time tomorrow, same place. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.